My heart stopped in my home office with my microphone still on. Even now, saying it out loud feels unreal, like I'm describing someone else's worst day. But it happened to me, in the most ordinary setting possible. 2 monitors, a cluttered desk, my calendar packed tight, my inbox open like a second set of lungs, earbuds in, video call running, that tiny green light by the webcam telling me I was present, even though I hadn't truly been present in my own life for a long time. I was mid-explanation, using that calm, competent tone I'd trained myself to use no matter what. I remember the laptop fan humming steadily, like it didn't care what was happening to me. I remember the cursor blinking in a chat window. I remember a Slack notification popping up as if the universe was trying to be funny. Then my chest tightened in a way that didn't feel like stress. It was pressure first, not sharp pain. More like something heavy pressing from the inside, making every breath feel too small. My vision narrowed at the edges, slow and deliberate, like someone was dimming the room 1% at a time. I tried to shift in my chair, and my legs didn't respond the way they should have. My fingers went cold, clumsy on the mouse, and my own voice sounded far away, as if it was coming through a speaker across the room instead of out of me. And here's the part that still embarrasses me to admit. My first thought wasn't, I need help. My first thought was, don't make this weird. Don't interrupt the call. Don't look unreliable. Just picture that for a moment. Your body quietly slipping out from under you while you're still trying to perform being fine. Have you ever pushed something aside because it felt inconvenient, even when it mattered? Because that's what I did, right up until the moment I couldn't. I tried to inhale deeper, and the air didn't come the way it was supposed to. Before that day, my life looked normal enough from the outside, especially by modern standards. I was 37, working remote in tech, and if you asked my coworkers what I was like, they would have said dependable, fast, always available. I wore that reputation like armor. I liked being the person who replied in minutes, who jumped on calls at awkward hours, who fixed problems before they became disasters. It felt clean. It felt measurable. It felt like proof that I mattered. The problem was what it did to everything else. My apartment was quiet in the way a place gets when someone lives there physically, but not emotionally. My home office wasn't a room so much as a command center. Cables, chargers, sticky notes, 2 mugs I kept reusing because washing them felt like wasted time. My meals were whatever could be eaten with one hand while the other moved a mouse. Lunch was optional. Sleep was negotiable. Caffeine wasn't a treat, it was a strategy. My partner lived in the same space with me, but over time we started moving around each other like roommates who were trying not to collide. I wasn't cruel. I didn't yell. I didn't cheat. I wasn't out drinking or doing anything dramatic. I was just absent. I told myself it was temporary. I told myself it was responsible. I told myself I was building something. There's a sentence I said so often it became background noise. After this call. After this call, I'll come sit with you. After this call, I'll listen. After this call, we'll talk about your day. After this call, I'll take a break. It was always after. Always later. And the more I said it, the less my partner asked. Sometimes they'd stand in the doorway of my office, not interrupting, just waiting for me to notice. And I'd lift one finger without looking up, my universal signal for give me a minute. They would nod, quietly, and walk away. At the time I interpreted that as understanding. Now I see it for what it was, practice. Practice at not needing me. If you've ever lived like that, treating love like a tab you keep open but never click, then you know how sneaky it is. Nothing explodes. Nothing dramatic happens. You just slowly stop showing up, and you call it productivity because productivity gets praised in meetings. Presence doesn't. The first signs didn't arrive like a warning siren. They arrived like minor annoyances, things I could explain away, things I could fold into my usual story about being under pressure. It started with my heart doing these little stutters, like a skipped step on a staircase. I'd be sitting perfectly still, reading an email, and suddenly there'd be a flutter in my chest that made me pause for half a second. Then it would pass, and I'd tell myself it was caffeine, or stress, or dehydration, anything that didn't require me to stop. Sometimes it happened when I stood up too fast. A quick dizziness, like the room tilted. I'd put a hand on the edge of my desk and wait it out. I'd blame the fact that I hadn't eaten. I'd promise myself I'd grab something in a minute. Then another notification would hit, and the promise would dissolve. There was also this creeping anxiety that didn't feel emotional at first. It felt physical, tight throat, shallow breathing. a sense that I couldn't quite get comfortable in my own skin. I'd be on a call, nodding along, and suddenly my pulse would surge like I was sprinting, even though I was just sitting there in a chair. My body was acting like it was trying to outrun something. The honest truth is I noticed. I just didn't respect what I was noticing. I bought electrolyte packets and told myself I was being health conscious. I switched coffee brands as if that was a medical plan. I Googled symptoms late at night with one eye half closed, then clicked out of the search results the moment the word serious appeared. I wasn't looking for answers. I was looking for permission to keep going. My partners saw more than I wanted to admit. They'd watch me rub my chest absent-mindedly, or take a deeper breath like I was trying to reset my lungs, and they'd ask, gently, if I was okay. I always said yes too quickly. I always made it smaller than it was. And if they pressed, I'd do this thing I'm ashamed of now. I'd turn it into a joke, or I'd make it about work. I'd say something like, it's just the week, as if the week was a storm that would pass and my body was just temporarily inconvenient. There was one morning, maybe 2 weeks before it happened, when I woke up with my heart already racing. Not a normal, I had a bad dream racing. A hard, insistent pounding that made me sit up in bed and listen to my own chest like it was a stranger. My partner was still asleep beside me, breathing evenly, calm, trusting. I remember looking at them and feeling this strange split inside me. One part of me wanted to wake them up and say, something's wrong. The other part wanted to protect the day, protect the schedule, protect the illusion that I was fine. So I chose the schedule. Have you ever done that? Chosen the plan over the truth because the truth felt like it would disrupt everything? Because that's what I did, over and over, until my body stopped giving me gentle warnings and decided to take control in a way I couldn't ignore. That afternoon started like every other afternoon, which is part of what makes it so hard to think about without feeling cold inside. I had back-to-back meetings stacked so tight there wasn't even a clean minute between them, and I remember feeling almost proud of it, like the busier I was, the more legitimate my life looked. My partner had come into the office earlier with a quiet question, something normal, something small, and I didn't even turn my head. I gave them that automatic after this call and watched them leave the doorway without a word. Then the next call began. Faces in little squares. A shared screen. Someone talking about priorities. I was answering like I always did, fast and confident, keeping my voice calm even while my mind was juggling 3 other things. My earbuds pressed into my ears, sealing me into that work world tunnel where nothing exists except what's being said right now. I felt the first surge in my chest about 10 minutes in. A hard thump, then a flutter, like my heart couldn't decide on a rhythm. I kept my expression neutral because that's what I'd trained myself to do. Hide discomfort, keep performing, don't make it personal. I shifted in my chair and tried to breathe deeper, but the air felt thin, like it wasn't reaching where it needed to reach. A wave of heat rushed through me. Not like a fever, more like my body suddenly forgetting how to regulate itself. My hands started to sweat, and my fingers got weirdly numb, like the nerve signals were delayed. I glanced down at my wrist as if I could check my pulse through my skin the way you check the time. The room didn't spin the way it does when you're drunk. It narrowed. It tightened. My vision started closing in at the edges, and the center of everything, my screen, the faces, the agenda, became too bright and too far away at the same time. I remember thinking, I just need to stand up. I just need water. I tried to push my chair back and my legs didn't behave. They didn't collapse instantly. It was worse than that. It was like the connection between intention and movement had been unplugged. I reached for the desk to steady myself, and my hand landed wrong, sliding off the edge like my coordination was suddenly borrowed. In my earbuds, someone asked me a question. I know they did because I saw my name flash in the corner, someone trying to pull me back in. I opened my mouth to answer, and the sound that came out didn't match the sentence I meant to say. It was thinner, weaker, like my voice was being pushed through a straw. This is the moment I want you to picture with me, because it's the part 1 replay when I'm trying to explain what fear actually feels like. Not movie fear, real fear. Imagine you're still technically there. Your screen is on, your microphone is live, the world is continuing, and yet your body is quietly slipping away from you, inch by inch, while your brain is screaming to keep it normal. I remember the laptop fan. I remember the tiny buzzing from my phone on the desk. I remember thinking, absurdly, that I should mute myself. Then the pressure in my chest turned into something heavier, like my whole torso was being compressed. My breath became shallow, quick, useless. The room seemed to tilt forward. I tried to call my partner's name, but even that felt distant, like I was calling from underwater. And then I was on the floor. Not gently, not with control. One second I was half standing, half gripping the desk, and the next second the carpet was against my cheek, rough and real. My earbuds yanked slightly, and one of them fell out. The sound of the call changed instantly, muffled, tinny, voices suddenly louder and more chaotic because the mic was still on and the laptop was still doing its job. I couldn't get a full breath. My chest wasn't doing what it normally did. It felt like my body had forgotten the sequence. In, out, in, out. It was like the instructions were missing. Footsteps. Fast. My partner's voice, sharp in a way I'd never heard it before, like panic stripped all softness away. They dropped down beside me, and I could feel the vibration of their movement more than I could see them. Their hands were on my shoulder, then on my face, then somewhere near my chest, as if they were trying to wake my body up through touch alone. I tried to answer them. I tried to blink, "I'm here." But the world kept dimming. I heard them say my name again, louder, and then I heard them speaking to someone. Phone speaker on, words spilling out too fast. I caught fragments, address, not responding, breathing weird, "Please hurry." The kind of sentences you never imagine will be spoken about you. From the laptop, the call had turned into confusion. I heard someone ask if I was okay. I heard another voice say they thought something was wrong. I heard my partner snap something like, "Call 911" to the room, not caring who heard it, not caring that my coworkers were listening through the open mic. That's when it hit me, in a weird, distant way. My professional mask was gone. My body had ripped it off. Then sound started breaking apart, not fading smoothly, but chopping into pieces, voices, then silence, then a burst of sound again. The ceiling above me looked too far away. The light felt harsh. My partner's face hovered in and out of view, blurred by tears I couldn't wipe away and eyes I couldn't fully control. Somewhere in the distance, a siren rose and fell. The sound was both comforting and terrifying because it meant help was coming, and it also meant this was real. The door opened hard. More footsteps. New voices, steady and practiced. The room filled with movement. Bags hitting the floor, quick questions, someone telling my partner to step back just a little, someone else speaking my name like they were trying to anchor me. I wanted to hold on. I wanted to say, "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to disappear." I wanted to tell my partner something honest and simple, something I'd been postponing for months. But I couldn't get the words out. The last clear thing I remember is my partner's hand gripping mine so tightly it almost hurt, like they were trying to keep me in the world by force, and their voice breaking on my name. And then, nothing. Not darkness like sleep. Not a peaceful fade. Just an abrupt, terrifying absence, like someone cut the power to a room I didn't even realize I was standing in. People ask what it felt like when my heart stopped, and I never know how to answer without disappointing them. There was no bright tunnel. No floating. No grand moment where everything made sense. It wasn't mystical. It was psychological. It was the strangest, most brutal kind of quiet, like the world didn't go dark. It simply stopped being available to me. But even inside that absence, something was happening. Not in a cinematic way. More like fragments, impressions without a timeline, memories without transitions. It didn't feel like dreaming. It felt like my mind, finally stripped of distractions, finally cut off from pings and tasks and calendars, started doing the one thing I had been avoiding for years, paying attention. And what it paid attention to wasn't work. It wasn't the projects I'd stayed up late finishing, or the calls I'd bragged about taking no matter what. It wasn't the little wins I thought made me valuable. What surfaced was smaller, simpler, heavier. A morning a few weeks earlier, my partner standing in the kitchen, hair still damp from the shower, holding 2 mugs, offering me one. Their eyes had this gentle hope in them, like maybe today I'd sit down for 3 minutes and actually talk. And I hadn't even looked up from my phone. I'd taken the mug without meeting their gaze, mumbled thanks, and walked back toward my desk, already typing. In that memory, I suddenly saw their face from the outside, the way I'd refused to see it then, the tiny drop in their shoulders, the quiet swallow, the practiced smile that tried to pretend it didn't hurt. That image looped, not dramatically, just relentlessly, like my mind was saying, "This is what you've been doing. This is what your reliability costs. Then another memory. A weekend afternoon when we'd planned to go for a walk. Nothing big. Just outside. Fresh air. The kind of ordinary thing couples do without thinking. I'd said yes. And then a work message came in, and I'd turned it into just 15 minutes. I remember the way my partner sat on the couch with their shoes on, waiting. 15 became 30. 30 became, I'm really sorry, it's urgent. Eventually they took the shoes off without a word and turned on the TV, not because they wanted to watch it, but because staring at the wall felt too honest. That's the thing about absence. It's not one moment you can apologize for. It's 1,000 tiny moments you don't even notice you're stealing. Just picture this for a moment. What if the last version of you someone remembers isn't the loving, thoughtful version you believe you are, but the distracted version you actually showed them most days? What if the person who sleeps beside you doesn't feel like they know you anymore? Those thoughts weren't punishment. They didn't feel like guilt sent from the sky. They felt like clarity, the kind you don't get when your phone is within reach and your brain has 1,000 ways to escape discomfort. There was fear, too, but not in the way I expected. It wasn't fear of dying in some abstract way. It was fear of disappearing without leaving anything real behind. Fear of being reduced to a list of tasks I completed and emails I answered quickly. I saw my partner again, this time not in a specific memory, but as a presence, the idea of them alone in that room with my body on the floor. I imagined their hands on my face, the tremble in their fingers, the shock of realizing the person they lived with might not come back. And the worst part, this is where shame became physical, was knowing I'd trained them to expect less from me. I'd taught them, day after day, to lower their needs, to stop reaching, to stop asking. There's a sentence that rose in me. Simple, almost childish. Please don't let this be the last way I leave them. And then, in the middle of that inner quiet, another kind of realization arrived, small but sharp. I had been treating my own body like it was a tool that existed to carry my brain to meetings. Like hunger was a nuisance. Like sleep was laziness. Like rest was something you earned, not something you needed. I don't know what you would feel in my place, but imagine it for a second. Your heart stops, and suddenly you understand that the life you were building was built on a foundation that could fail in one ordinary afternoon. Not during an adventure. Not during something meaningful. During a work call you wouldn't even remember a week later. That thought didn't make me panic. It made me mourn, not for death itself, but for the life I'd been missing while I was still alive. And somewhere, far away, like sound traveling through thick walls, I sensed motion returning. Pressure. Voices. A rhythm being forced back into my body by hands that knew what they were doing. I didn't see it. I didn't experience it. But I felt the world trying to pull me back, as if life was knocking on a door I didn't even realize had closed. Coming back wasn't a clean moment. It wasn't like waking up from sleep and stretching. It was confusion first, thick, heavy confusion, like my brain had been dropped into my skull at the wrong angle. I remember sound before I remember sight. A steady beeping that didn't match any rhythm I recognized from normal life. A soft hiss, like air moving through a tube. The distant shuffle of shoes. A low voice speaking in calm sentences that felt too organized for the chaos inside me. When I finally opened my eyes, the room looked washed out and unreal, like someone had turned the brightness up too high. White ceiling tiles, harsh overhead light, plastic equipment that seemed to crowd in around the bed. My mouth felt dry, sticky, like I'd been breathing through cotton. I tried to swallow and it hurt. I blinked again, and the first clear thought that formed was embarrassingly small. Where's my phone? That's how programmed I was. Even after a cardiac arrest, part of me was still reaching for the old reflex. Check notifications, regain control, re-enter the noise. But my hands were heavy. My arms didn't move the way I expected. There was tape on my skin. Something tugged gently when I shifted. My chest felt sore in a deep, bruised way, like it had been worked on from the inside. I tried to speak, and only a rough breath came out. Panic rose fast, sharp, animal panic, until a nurse appeared at the side of the bed and put a hand near my shoulder. Not grabbing, not restraining, just grounding. Their voice was steady. They told me where I was. ICU. They told me I'd had a cardiac event. They told me I was safe, that I was being monitored, that I needed to stay still. I couldn't hold on to the details at first. The words landed and slid off. Then I saw my partner. They were sitting in a chair close to the bed, but not close in the way we used to sit together on the couch. Close like someone who had been afraid to move, afraid to blink, afraid that any ordinary action could break the fragile fact that I was here. Their face looked exhausted in a raw way. Eyes red, skin pale, mouth pressed tight like they'd been holding themselves together for hours. When our eyes met, something in them changed. Relief, yes, but also something else. Shock, anger, love, all layered together like they didn't have the energy to separate it. They stood quickly and reached for my hand, and their fingers were trembling. Their grip was almost too tight, but I didn't pull away. I couldn't. My throat tightened, and my eyes burned, and I realized I was crying without deciding to. Tears just slid out, warm against my temples, because my body was still ahead of my pride. I tried to say their name, and it came out broken, a whisper with no strength behind it. They leaned close, and I could smell them. Soap, stale coffee, the faint scent of outside air like they'd stepped out and back in without really leaving. Their forehead touched my hand for a second, like a private apology or a prayer. For a few minutes, it was just that, me blinking, trying to understand what almost died actually meant, and them holding on to me like I might disappear again. Then voices in the hallway cut through the moment. A doctor speaking in calm, clipped phrases. My partner answering quietly. I couldn't catch everything, but I heard enough to feel my stomach drop. Cardiac arrest, dangerous rhythm, luck, timing, CPR, response time. Words that belong to other people's tragedies, not mine. My partner stepped out into the hall with the doctor, and the curtain wasn't fully closed. I could hear them more clearly than they probably realized. I lay there, unable to move much, staring at the ceiling, listening to my own life being discussed like a report. And then I heard the sentence that broke me in a way the collapse hadn't. My partner's voice was low, tired, not dramatic. They said they didn't know what to tell my family about me, because they realized they didn't actually know me anymore. Not recently, not emotionally. They said we lived in the same home, but it felt like I was always somewhere else. Just sit with that for a second. Imagine hearing the person you love admit, out loud, that you've become a stranger while still sharing the same address. I wanted to turn my head. I wanted to close my eyes and pretend I didn't hear it. But I couldn't escape. I didn't have my screens. I didn't have my work voice. I didn't have the illusion that I was fine. All I had was the quiet beep of the monitor and the truth, hanging in the hallway like it had been waiting there for years. Recovery didn't feel like a victory lap. It felt like learning how to live in a body I'd been treating like a machine and a relationship I'd been treating like background noise. The first few days were a blur of careful explanations and small humiliations. Nurses adjusting things I didn't understand. Doctors using words that sounded clinical and polite but carried real weight. Follow-ups, tests, a plan, limits. I had to listen to sentences that began with "you can't" and "you need to." And that alone was disorienting, because my whole identity had been built on being the guy who could always push through. When I finally went home, I expected relief. Instead, the apartment felt different, too quiet, too familiar, like walking into a place where a version of me had almost ended. My office door was half open, and I could see the desk from the hallway. The monitors were dark. The chair sat slightly angled, like it had been left mid-motion. I felt my throat tighten just looking at it. My body reacted before my mind did, heart rate spiking, breath going shallow. It wasn't pain. It was a warning. My nervous system remembered. I stood there, staring into that room, and for the first time in years I didn't reach for my phone to numb the feeling. I let it be uncomfortable. I let the panic rise and settle. I let my partner stand beside me in silence without trying to fix the moment. That became the first real change, staying. Not just staying in the apartment. Staying emotionally. Staying inside discomfort instead of fleeing into productivity. We started small, because big speeches would have been fake. I didn't come home and suddenly become a different person. I didn't make dramatic promises. I did something harder and quieter. I began telling the truth in short sentences. I'm scared. I don't know how to do this right yet. I heard what you said in the hallway. That last one landed between us like a weight. My partner didn't deny it. They didn't soften it to protect me. They just looked at me and nodded once, slow, like they were tired of performing optimism. We had conversations that weren't tidy. Sometimes they cried, and I didn't jump in with solutions. Sometimes I sat there feeling useless, because there was nothing to achieve. Sometimes I wanted to escape into email just to feel competent again. I caught myself reaching for the old habit, like a smoker patting their pocket automatically. And every time I caught it, I tried something new instead. A walk after dinner, even when I didn't feel like it. A real lunch away from screens. Sleeping without my laptop on the nightstand. Turning off notifications, not as a productivity hack, but as a boundary. Telling my team I had medical restrictions and sticking to them even when guilt tried to chew through me. The strangest part was how much space appeared when I stopped filling every minute. At first, the space felt like anxiety, like emptiness, like I was wasting time. Then, slowly, it started to feel like life. We created one small evening ritual that became more important than I expected. Nothing inspirational. Just tea. 2 mugs, like before, except this time I sat down. No earbuds. No, just one quick thing. We'd sit on the couch, sometimes talking, sometimes not. We'd watch something simple. We'd let the day end without me turning it into a second shift. I'm going to ask you something gently, because I think this is where people recognize themselves. When was the last time you sat with someone you love without multitasking? Without half leaving the room through a screen? Just being there, even if it's quiet? One night, a couple weeks after I was home, my partner said something that scared me and relieved me at the same time. They said they didn't know if we could go back to how it was before. And then they added, quietly, that maybe we shouldn't. Because before wasn't working. Before was me living like time was endless and love would wait. I looked at them and realized I didn't want before either. I didn't want to survive just to return to the same disappearance. So I kept choosing the small things. The boring things. The ordinary presence. The slow rebuilding that doesn't look impressive to anyone outside your home. And day by day, my partner started asking for me again. Not cautiously, not like a test. Just naturally. The way you ask someone you trust. I used to think losing your life meant a single dramatic event, an accident, a tragedy, something obvious. Now I think you can lose it in quieter ways first. You can lose it in tiny postponements. In after this call. In meals you skip and sleep you negotiate and conversations you delay until the right moment that never actually arrives. My heart stopped in the middle of a sentence I don't even remember. That's what haunts me most. Not the machines, not the hospital lights, not the fear in my partner's eyes. The fact that I almost vanished while doing something that didn't matter to my soul at all. And if you take anything from my story, let it be gentle, not preachy. Distraction is a kind of slow disappearance. You don't notice it while it's happening, because it looks like responsibility. It looks like ambition. It looks like being reliable. But the people who love you don't need you to be available to everyone. They need you to be present with them. Just picture your own life for a moment. The rooms you move through every day, the faces you see, the small chances you get to show love in ordinary ways. What would feel unbearable to leave unsaid if you didn't get another week? Another morning? Another normal evening? I'm not perfect now. I still get tempted to hide inside work when I'm tired or unsure. But I have something I didn't have before, awareness. A clear, quiet understanding that time is borrowed and love is not a background app. If you still have the chance to say something kind, don't leave it for later. If you still have someone to hug, do it while you can.